working on Iranian affairs know Dr. Ahmed Shaheed as former United Nations Special Rapporteur on Human Rights in Iran. He is now a UN Special Rapporteur on freedom of religion or belief. There was a chance for me to talk with Dr. Ahmed Shaheed at the University of Essex in England. He is currently Deputy Head of the reputable Center for Human Rights. As the Special Reporter on freedom of belief or religion in the United Nations, what are the main challenges at the moment for you at this current situation in the world as we are facing?
Let me start by, first of all, thanking all those Iranians and others who worked with me on my former UN mandate as Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights in the Islamic Republic of Iran. So I just wanted to note that. My current mandate, as you rightly pointed out, which is freedom of religion or belief, does require me to monitor all the countries in the world, including Iran. And as you all very well know, that in Iran, religious arguments are often used in ways that undermine human rights. And there is a very strong entanglement between religion and the state. Iran is a theocracy between religion and state, which has a negative impact on people's rights. Very frequently, as you just pointed out, this affects the rights of religious or belief minorities, but it can also affect rights of those who are in the majority religion, because state controls religion so closely. State demands people do certain things on account of religion or not do certain things on account of religion, and uses religion as a way to justify certain actions. So there is a lot of concern with regard to what's happening in Iran on this account. I have been monitoring the Baha'i situation, not just in my previous mandate, but also in my current mandate, because the Baha'i continue to face persecution in the country, harassment and other forms of violation of their rights, as do the Sufis, as you mentioned, and some of the other religious or belief minorities. These are matters of serious concern. I continue to monitor them and raise my voice about them. In terms of my current mandate, what are the key challenges? I think it's a very long list in terms of what the challenges are. We are living at a time of growing intolerance based on religion or belief. This can range from forms of direct discrimination, as the Baha'i face in Iran, bans on certain activities or and restrictions of certain rights, or there can be indirect discrimination, which often come in the form of laws that sound to be neutral but can have a disproportionate impact on certain belief communities. But also, one is very concerned about the use of religion for terrorism, extremism, for violent activity. In terms of what I have been reporting so far, what I have been highlighting the growing intolerance around the world and the way this affects various persons who are vulnerable, and this includes people who are from religious minorities, women, children, refugees, migrants, and a whole range of other people who face discrimination. And of course, I have been highlighting how the growing role of religion in public life has, in some countries, tended to target, like I said again, gender minorities. So it could be women's rights, could be LGBT community, but overall, it is the use of religion to target people seen to be different, people seen to be vulnerable, and people who seem to be, the other. So the top concerns are, the use of religion for suppressing the rights of others, the use of religion for terrorist activity or for violence, and also some of the responses from states against religious communities, whereby states are increasingly seeing religion as a security threat, and thereby using legitimate concerns about national security to suppress legitimate rights of persons belonging to different religions or beliefs.
Thank you. In terms of countries, I want to rank the top 3. Where are your most worries situated geographically?
I think trying to rank countries is always is a problem because different indicators might produce different results. But because you asked the question, I think although by no means an exhaustive, by no means a fully, if you like, not by all means not an incontestable claim, is to look at the communications database of the United Nations Special Procedures. The database shows the kinds of letters that have been sent by various rapporteurs to various countries on various issues. And if you look at the database and look at the communications sent regarding freedom of religion or belief, or from my mandates for the past 18 years or so, you find the highest recipient of communications is Iran. So does that make Iran the country of the most serious concern? Perhaps not necessarily, because there can be other countries in which there is just as bad or even worse violations of people's rights based on religion or belief, including outright if you like massacres and other mass atrocities taking place on account of religion. But Iran is one of the countries in which one has a very serious concern about the use of religion for suppressing the rights of other people.
Coming back to the issue of Iran, currently we are observing situation has escalated in the past few months against the Gunabadi dervishes in Iran. Many of them have been arrested, reports of torture. Have you had accounts from them? Have you been in communication, or probably recommendations you might have made or planning to make?
Well, today we will see the council is set to appoint a new rapporteur on Iran. I work very closely with the former rapporteur, late Asma Jahangir, and I look forward to working very closely with whoever is the new rapporteur that we will get appointed today. Because, like you said, there are a number of issues in which my mandate requires to work very closely with the country mandate holder to address these issues. I have raised my concerns about a number of these issues, and I will continue to look at them. I have received reports also about these violations. And
regarding the Gunabadi?
Yes, indeed, and I am monitoring what is happening. But since there's a country mandate holder coming in today, I think it'll have to be him and I discussing what are the best ways to go forward, and then proceed accordingly.
You mentioned the situation around the world. Rohingyas in Myanmar is a mixture of ethnic and religious. Can you update us on the latest the situation is regarding your tenure in the area?
Well, there's a country mandate holder on Myanmar, and she's been there for a long time, and she's been working very hard on this issue. She's done very well, highlighting the concerns and advocating on them. There are also other UN mechanisms focused on Myanmar. The issue is not so much, what we are monitoring in the country, but the issue of impunity and the lack of accountability on the part of the government, lack of responsiveness on the part of the government. We just saw a few days back, Amnesty International issue a report containing a lot of evidence, I think a very comprehensive report on what's happening in the country with regard to violations. And then we also heard the High Commissioner speak on this subject recently when he addressed the Human Rights Council. And the key message that he and others make is the fact that the government is just in denial. They're refusing to accept that there are massive violations taking place, and that's as a way of avoiding accountability, as a way of avoiding to look into it. But clearly, as everybody has been saying, the plight of the Rohingya in the country and situation in the country more generally is one of very serious concern at the moment, given the scale of the violations and the depth of impunity with which we're working on.
As today, the Special UN Rapporteur on Human Rights in Iran is being announced officially, I would like to ask you about your access problem. The Iranian government never allowed you access to Iran, but you always said that you had access to the people who had complaints to make. So did such restrictions ever affect the outcome of what you were doing?
Well, I think I was able to work around those restrictions the government imposed on me. And I think many of those who work in the human rights field today find that there are ways to work around government's failure to cooperate. I think the loser in that non cooperation actually is the government of Iran. Because by refusing to receive me in the country, they first of all signaling to everybody that they're not serious about addressing human rights challenges in the country. That's a negative report on the country to begin with. And secondly, as a UN rapporteur, my job is not all the time to castigate a country or to name and shame them. My primary concern is see how we can engage with the country, identify what's good in the country, focus on what's bad in the country, and see how the country can actually address them in a quick manner. So, of course, compared to many other countries, there are elements in Iran which are worth noting, and I have done them in my reports. For example, level of education and the level of health service in some areas, and many other areas where one can speak, I think, very proudly of the achievement of the Iranian people. But these cannot be discussed. Of course, I would mention them, but then a focus on them also requires a close analysis, because even when things are so looking so good, there could be elements of discrimination or other issues that need to be highlighted. So I can't speak about them without knowing them. But if I was able to go to the country, I would be able to examine both the positive and the negative and write about both. But being denied access to the country means I cannot rely simply on what the government tells me. I cannot just repeat what the government tells me. I have to be able to examine them. I can't examine them without going there. In terms of reporting on the violations and talking to victims, alleged victims of violations, I think if I had gone to the country, I think the people have been far more reluctant to talk to me because they could be seen talking to me, and there could be reprisals, as the government of Iran has a policy of reprisals against those who cooperate with UN mechanisms. But because I didn't go to the country, I was able to use technology, safe technological means today, to interview about 1,000 Iranian nationals, about a third of whom were in the country.
All around the world, Iranians?
Yes, but a third of them, so about 300 plus, were people in the country. And I could speak with them, or my office could speak with them more comfortably for them in their homes. Not just a half an hour of a meeting, but 1 hour, 2, 3, 4 hours, sometimes over several days, because some testimonies were painful and people wanted to take more time. So I think I was able to do a much better job interviewing people because I had to focus on these means rather than go to the country and meet people face to face.
You did a huge volume of work communicating, and your responsibility expanded around 5 years, from 2011 to 2015. Now your colleague, Dr. Javaid Rehman, is going to be appointed today. What suggestions do you have for your new colleague to embrace this responsibility?
But as you said, he's a colleague. So, since I am a serving rapporteur still, and he's going to become a serving rapporteur, then, we would be working within the system. And so, I would obviously be very happy to share with him my experiences working on Iran. I would also be happy to, if you like, pass the mandate to him. You might recall that when Asma Jahangir was appointed the rapporteur for Iran, I held a workshop for her here in Essex University in February 2017, and the idea was to hand over the work I did on Iran to her. And we brought together a number of other UN rapporteurs, many physically traveled to be with us, serving rapporteurs with whom she would have had to work, and I had worked with. And we also brought in a lot of Iranian human rights defenders around the world, not just in the UK, who had been working with me in as dialogue points or as information points, sources, and then brought in academics who were experts on Iran and the region, and other human rights experts, such as those working on issues of torture, detention, people who had information about measuring economic impacts of sanctions. So a very wide group of stakeholders. We met over 2 days here at Essex, and I think both Asma Jahangir and her new assistant at the USHR, I think truly benefited from the engagement with all this community because it built a network for her to work on. I would be looking forward to a similar thing with Professor Rahman if he was open to doing so. But obviously, it doesn't have to because he's independent. But I think as a colleague, we're always prepared to work together, and I'm sure he'll be prepared to work with us as well.
One more question, because you mentioned the impact of the sanctions. Do you think that these new sanctions brought upon by President Trump of United States would help the situation?
Well, I am not a supporter of economic sanctions. I'm not a supporter of any form of sanctions that do not target specific perpetrators. Because although economic sanctions are not directly banned in international law, they can have effects which are prohibited, such as the impacts on those who are vulnerable, children, so on and so forth. So a sanctions regime must always be very carefully tailored and monitored. And so, as a human rights defender, I'd be very concerned to monitor the impact of these sanctions and report on the impact to the council and ask the council to look at it. It is very unfortunate that things have had to come to this situation, and I think Iran obviously failed to address a number of human rights concerns that people have raised, and things have, I think, in many ways worsened. Although in some areas you can say there's been some progress, but it often remains a progress in the letter, but not in the actual practice. And then, of course, sanctions are not linked to human rights; they're part of a broader geostrategic situation. Again, the region itself is in great turmoil, and Iran's actions have not necessarily been, the most helpful for stability in the region. In fact, it's I think in many ways aggravated them. So the concerns are there from that perspective, but from a human rights perspective, I am concerned about the impact sanctions could have on the people of Iran.
Thank you very much, Doctor, for your time. Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure.